The topic for next 30 minutes is building apps for everyone and accessibility with React Native. So just to give you a quick intro, what is accessibility? This is something opposite of accessibility. It is one inaccessible slide. So let's get started. I'm Akshat Paul, and I come from sunny New Delhi, India. I am an author and a developer, but I also have a fancy pant designation at my place of work, which is McKinsey and Company. I'm a digital specialist, aka technology consultant. What does that even mean? It means I code on the go. And this is one of the pictures I clicked at some airport a few weeks back in the VRs after midnight when I was programming and wondering, getting all those philosophical questions, why airport Wi-Fi sucks and why they give it only for 45 minutes at max. So most of the places I travel, I get really bad internet and I have to code most of the time offline. I don't know if this is something to brag about or not, but it's fun. I'm also author of a few books and technical reviewer on few books. I've authored book on React Native and Ruby Motion. And I saw Manning is partner here. I worked with them as technical reviewer on one of the titles this year, which is on microservices. Great insight for introduction to microservices. When I was making this slide, I realized I have a very peculiar skill that I build native apps without coding in native for last almost 5 years. So that's a very peculiar skill I have. First with Ruby Motion, then with React Native. Beside that, I am also a keto fanatic. Sorry, I had to add this slide because most of my tech videos don't get that many views. But this one is my transformation interview with a guy named Dr. Berg. He has some million subscribers on YouTube. So this video has got pretty good views. So you can have a look at it and add some more views. Agenda for this presentation, coming back to the real meat, is what is accessibility? Who is it for? Design for accessibility, code for accessibility, where we have a demo and tools. So I'll be doing a live demo that is first for me on a presentation. Of course, I have a backup of a video, just in case. And how to plan for accessibility. So let's get started. What is accessibility? Accessibility refers to designing of product, devices, environments for people who experience disabilities, vision, hearing, cognitive. So that is, we have specific terms for them in the tangible world also, like curb cuts, friendly ramp. These are minor things in our environment, but they make a big difference in the life of specially abled. But just an accessible design, which is also called universal design when you are building anything, is not enough. There's also something called assistive technology. And accessibility, a true accessibility, is enabling access for the people with disabilities, special needs, with the help of accessible design and assistive technology. What is assistive technology? A common example of assistive technology in the tangible, the real world, will be a wheelchair, hearing aid, braille. But there is one more member to it in this era, which is cell phones, which is smartphones, which are really making a difference in the world of accessibility. So who is it for? People with vision issue, blindness, low vision, color blindness, hearing issues like deafness, hard of hearing, having cognitive issues like learning disability, distractibility, inability to remember or focus, which usually happens with me when I'm on stage. But essentially, who is it for? Like, is it for someone else? Because if you go into data, essentially, out of 100 users, it's only 20% of the users who require accessibility, whether it is in the real world or if we focus on software world. So is it really worth it to spend so much? Of course, there are a much higher conscious reason to include accessibility in your apps, but is it really worth it? Sometimes you'll get this question from the business, and there is always this pitch and anti-pitch on that. So what I did an experiment. I went and clicked some pictures. I went to Wrocław main square, and I clicked some pictures. So the picture on the right, which is a high definition picture, is how I see main square when my specs are on. And picture on the left is how I see when my specs are off. So now imagine instead of looking at main square, it's our iOS or Android application. Your customer, your key customer, loses his assistive device like his spectacles. How will he work with the device? And he's in some foreign country. It will take a couple of hours to get him a spare one. How will he continue to work in our app? And every minute is important when you created an application which is live. So essentially, accessibility is for everyone. Because there could be temporary issues like broken bones recovery, loss of assistive device, technical issues like slow connection, screen size, working on old technology. In our case, previous versions of iOS and Android. In case of web apps, there is always Internet Explorer. Then there is a crisis mode. The crisis mode is in which anyone can get stuck. It is a very common example. There is also some studies on it, but a common example is that somebody in your house needs emergency care, and you go to the hospital or insurance company app, and you can find all the information except the emergency number. And your brain does not work at that time during the crisis mode. So the application should be ready for such crisis mode. So just like real world, we have accessible design and assistive technology. Even in the software world, in the apps world, we have design and assistive technology. So let's design for accessibility, which includes mainly 4 parts. That is layout. Different form factors require different kind of layout, and your application must be fit to adapt to it. Contrast, using a wrong shade of gray can really make your application inaccessible and incomprehensible in sunlight. Having a simple interface, as I mentioned, that not putting vital information inside, sleeping in hamburger menu or somewhere in more, but at the right place. And of course, typography, right kind of type faces, right kind of fonts are very essential to make your application accessible. Now, which brings us to the next part, which is code for accessibility. Both iOS and Android provide something called screen reader. In iOS, it's called voiceover. And in Android, it's called TalkBack, which is recently renamed to UI Android Accessibility Kit. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they want to add some more features into it. The best part is that with React Native, you don't need to include any library. You don't need to add any package. It all comes out of box. The support is just there. You just need to use it. And it is so simple to use. I'll show you how. With only these 2 properties, almost 60%, 70% of your work will be done. You'll mostly be using these 2 properties and one more, which I'll show you how to use. And that's all you need. So we are pretty quick, reached our demo. So now I am entering the world of live demo. Let's get started. Have some water. Live demos are a bit dangerous place. Someone once told me, when you give a live demo, you're very uncomfortable. It's like standing naked in front of audience. And now, I think I made you guys equally uncomfortable with that line. So, I do such things. Cool. So, what we see here is a very simple, basic to-do application. That is the best way to get started instead of a Hello World application. So, let me switch on voiceover. I hope the audio works.
VoiceOver on simulator, iPhone X 11.4 window. Todas for the day, has keyboard focus.
Oh, great.
You are currently on a text element.
That's great. So let's traverse through this application.
Edit to do, book tickets, create demo, build slides for React Native Conf.
So, something is wrong in this application. Of course, that is by design. That we see all the to-do list is merged and squashed together. And it's actually not making sense, except the header. Nothing is making sense. So let's get into the code.
Code, .listjs,
One-
rn conf Toro example, window, .listjs, text, voiceover off.
That happens. So before I get into the code part, let me show you another not a very cool, it's a kind of a cool tool. That's the only tool we use. It's called Accessibility Inspector. And with Accessibility Inspector, we don't need to switch on voiceover every time we test. Not a good idea when you're in a workplace with OpenOffice. Accessibility Inspector let you inspect your application. It also has some other cool features, like you can run an audit on your application. It gives you certain real-time feedback. Also checking up the font size. If you look at the form there, its font changes. So you can do all these things, but its main work is to help us inspect our application. If we look at our header, that is fine. There is that label which it was speaking, to-dos for the day. And if we go down, that is all very bad code, all squashed together. The app will work for regular users, but for accessibility, it won't work. So let's look at our code like this. So if you see there, this property accessible true is actually not required. This is a very weird, okay, let me increase the font size. Too big, yeah. So accessible true is actually not required here. What it does is that it squashes all the information in that view and its children together. And how to use this in such scenario is that you add an accessibility label if you want to squash everything and maybe rename it just like list of to-dos. So you need to add accessibility label there. But in this case, we'll just remove this bit. And now if you look at it, our header is clear, our form is good, and we still have the list is still combined together. So before I switch on the voiceover, let me just remove this from here also. And check it once again. Yeah, now it works fine. So let me switch on voiceover. Error. Cool. Now let me switch on voiceover. That is a risky thing.
Voiceover on simulator, iPhone X 11.4 window. .is for the day, has keyboard focus. You are currently on a text element.
Cool.
Build slides for React Native Conf.
Yep, that works.
Create demo. Book tickets.
Okay.
Create demo.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that the user will not know what to do next. It's fine, it's reading the to-do, but it doesn't know what to do next. For that, there is another property called accessibility trait. And
Code, Toro.js, rn conf Toro example, window, voiceover off.
VS Code is a bit dangerous, you know. It's extremely accessible, so it'll read the whole code. So let's add a trait here. That was a button. You just need to add button. That's it. Okay. Let me first check it with Accessibility Inspector. Hey, it works. Now I am confident to switch on voiceover.
Voiceover on simulator, iPhone X 11.4 window. .is for the day, has keyboard focus. You are currently on a text element. Build slides for React Native Conf button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space.
Yep. So now the user knows what to do. Let me switch off the voiceover now.
Voiceover off.
Yeah, now the user knows what to do, and it all comes out of box. You just need to add the trait button, and it will tell you what it has, what the user has to do. There are other options like link, header, so that it guides the user what next they have to do. This demo would be best if you close your eyes, then you'll know what has to be done. Cool. So anything else? So I'm good with the demo. Let me get back to my presentation. I'm done with the demo. Cool. So, what's next? So we talked about accessibility label, and accessibility trait, and you saw it's so simple. And I believe after this talk, you can include them in your application anywhere you are. Of course, you might have to change a little bit of design here and there, the tree here and there, but it should work. So just like accessibility trait, that works only in iOS. Android also has a similar property, which you have to include. If you're building for both, you have to include both one after another, which is accessibility component type, and the same properties, the same values work there, button, link, whatever comes out of box. Then we have accessibility view is model, which works like if you have two sibling views, and this is a binary version, true or false. So if you make one of them true, the one which is true, it will work, and the other one, the other sibling view will be ignored by the voiceover. In this case, voiceover. Yeah, and accessible elements hidden does the opposite. What it does is that whichever you put true, whatever view you put true, it will be ignored. And the other sibling view and its children will be picked up by the voiceover. We have something similar in case of Android, which is important for accessibility. If you put yes, only those, this is especially only for sibling views, only those will be, those children will be picked up by the talkback. And if you put no hide descendants, it would be ignored. But of course, there is always custom functions which you have. So you can use on accessibility tab, in which you can trigger your custom function on double tapping a click. So when you use accessibility, when you switch on accessibility and voiceover on your mobile, you have to do double click to access a button. So this can be customized, what has to be triggered using on accessibility tab. And there's another cool property on Magic Tap, which leverages the double tap with two fingers. So anywhere in your application, you can, it could be some emergency or SOS option. Usually insurance company apps or administration apps use it. So let's go to tools. So there are two main tools after you have included accessibility in your application. It's Accessibility Inspector, which I just showed you. And Android has equally cool tool, which is called Accessibility Scanner. It also gives you real-time feedback and way more information, and it actually gives you solution what to do in your application. I'm coming to the last part of my presentation, which is always plan for accessibility. Don't plan like how I planned my demo. That was a really bad design by choice. But identify your goals, create personas. In personas, we always miss the users who require accessibility. Always make it key part of your planning. Make everyone in charge. Usually what I see is in project teams, there is one person who takes the flag of accessibility, while the rest of the people just don't understand why they are working for this small number of users. But coach everyone, make everyone know about this, and think empathy. That is how you can mostly win any debate when you have to include accessibility for your projects. And there are a lot of other free stuff which comes along when you include accessibility. You can feel quite happy by empowering users. It's about human rights, equality, diversity, inclusiveness, and look how happy everyone is. So I leave you with two quotes on accessibility, which I really like. And I use them whenever I have to pitch to business that we should include accessibility in our applications. It's quite easy, especially with React Native. Accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential by Deborah Rah, who is an advocate for accessibility across software and the real world. And this one totally makes sense. Accessible design is a good design. And that's by Steve Ballmer. Yeah. So thank you, guys. That's a wrap.